Imagine this, a petrochemical site in Saudi Arabia. The temperature is already building. By midday, it will be unbearable. It is the shift change. The compound gates are open. Workers are coming in for the morning shift. I am standing outside, clipboard in hand, doing what I had done hundreds of times before on hundreds of sites before this one. I was running the safety side this time on a $20 billion project. I had the qualifications, I had the experience, I had a technically perfect safety management system which I had been using most of my career. The documentation was impeccable. The audits were green. The compliance architecture was, by every measurable standard, excellent. But the culture was wrong, and I knew it. The workers were performing safety for the inspection, following the rules when I was watching, cutting corners when nobody was looking. The culture depended entirely on my presence, and I cannot be everywhere at once. No leader can. That morning, a site foreman stopped me, a man with 30 years on the tools, practical experience I would not gain in 2 more careers. Quiet, respected, the kind of man whose opinion I had learned over the years was always worth listening to. He looked at me and he said these words, "Paul, we do not know why you care. Not we don't think you care. We do not know why you care." That sentence, those 11 syllables, reordered everything I thought I understood about my own profession. This video is about what to do when that sentence, or something close to it, is said to you by a worker, by a foreman, by someone whose silence has been telling you for longer than you wanted to admit that the work you have been doing is not being received the way you intend. I want to be honest about what most safety leaders do at that moment, including, for a long time, me. The most natural response in the world when somebody tells you they cannot see why you care is to defend, to explain, to point to the work. What do you mean? Look at the audits. Look at the documentation. Look at the toolbox talks. Look at the visible commitments I have made. I have been working on this culture for months. That response is human. It is understandable. It is also, and this is the hard part, exactly the wrong response. Because the foreman was not asking for evidence. The foreman was telling me plainly that the evidence I had been producing was not visible to the people it needed to be visible to. He was not challenging the existence of the work. He was naming the absence of its effect. Defending the work at that moment does 2 things. The first is that it gets you nothing useful. The foreman has heard the defense before, from every previous safety leader who stood on that compound. The second is that it tells the foreman that you have not actually heard what he just told you, which closes immediately the only door he was offering you. And here is the harder version of the same point. I had been on that site for months. The foreman had been watching me for months. He had been considering the whole time whether to say something. The moment he chose to say it at the gate at shift change, with workers walking past, was not casual. It was the most deliberate piece of feedback I had ever been given in my career. And the defensive response treats it as if it were casual. That is the common mistake, not a failure of competence, a failure of recognition. So why does it happen? Why does the defensive response come so naturally to safety leaders who, by every other measure, are doing the work properly? I think there are 2 reasons, and I think they are related. The first is that every qualification any of us has ever earned in this profession trained us to manage the system around the people, the legislation, the frameworks, the risk assessments, the investigations, the reporting structures, all of it correct, all of it earned, none of it sufficient. What no qualification anywhere in the world that I have ever seen has ever taught us is the human half of the job, the methodology for the trust, relationship, and influence dimensions of leading people through dangerous work. I have a name for that absence. I call it the human safety gap. It is the reason the foreman could honestly say what he said to me. It is the reason workers across the high hazard industries perform safety for the inspector and stop performing it the moment the inspector leaves. It is the reason new initiatives produce a spike in the dashboard for 3 months and a quiet return to baseline by month 6. The human safety gap is not a flaw in our profession. It is an absence at the foundation of our training. And until it is closed, every other thing we do as safety leaders is built on sand. The second reason the defensive response comes so naturally is more personal. When a worker tells you that they cannot see why you care, there is a part of you, an honest part, that knows they are right, that you have been showing up with a clipboard, that you have been leading with systems, that you have in fact never once made it explicit to any of those workers that you go home thinking about them, that you are scared for them, that losing one of them on your watch is the thing you are most afraid of in your professional life. Defending the work is the easiest way to avoid sitting with that truth. The much harder thing is to acknowledge that the foreman is correct, that the care has not been visible, and that the only way it ever becomes visible is to do something now that proves it. Here is what I should have done that morning. Here is what I now teach safety leaders to do when their version of this moment arrives. 3 things, each one harder than it sounds. The first thing, stop. Say nothing for a long moment. Long enough that the foreman knows you actually heard him, rather than skipping straight to the answer. This sounds simple. It is not. The instinct to fill the silence with a response is one of the most powerful forces in any leadership conversation. The leaders who never lose anyone are the ones who have trained themselves to resist it. The silence is not awkward. The silence is the work. The silence is what tells the foreman that what he just said is being taken seriously. The second thing, when you do speak, ask one question. One, and then listen to the answer, all of it, without defending, without solving, without interrupting. The question is some version of this. Tell me what would make it visible. That question accepts everything the foreman has just told you. It does not argue. It does not explain. It treats him as the senior practitioner he is, and it asks him to tell you what he, with 30 years on tools, would need to see in order to know that your care was real. He will tell you, possibly not immediately, he may need a beat to recover from the fact that the safety leader did not defend himself, but he will tell you, and what he tells you will be more useful than anything the next 3 qualifications you might consider taking would teach you. The third thing, this is the part that everything else hinges on. In the next 48 hours, do one specific, visible thing that proves to him you actually heard what he said. Not a program, not a policy, not a new initiative. One specific thing visible to that foreman that responds to what he told you. It might be returning to him personally on Wednesday morning to thank him and tell him what you are doing about it. It might be implementing a small change he suggested before the end of the week. It might be raising the issue in the project review on Friday in a way he can hear about from his crew. The specifics matter less than the visibility. The visibility is the proof, and the 48-hour window is the deadline, because that is how long the foreman will wait before deciding whether you actually heard him. I call that whole sequence the silence, the question, the listening, the 48-hour follow-through, the one conversation. It is the smallest possible unit of cultural change I know of. It is the entry point to every other piece of safety leadership work I have ever taught. And it is every time, on every site, I've ever worked with the moment the culture starts to belong to the workforce rather than to the leader. If anything in this video has landed, if you recognize yourself or your site or a conversation you have had that you did not respond to the way you would have liked to, I want to offer you something. I run a community of safety leaders called Never Lose Anyone on the platform Skool. It is free to join. It is for senior practitioners who are doing exactly this work and want a place to think out loud about it with others doing the same. Inside the community, every video I produce comes with a practice module, a specific written scenario drawn from the work we have just covered, where you write the response you would give. Other members read your work, you read theirs. That peer learning between senior practitioners who have lived versions of the moment is the most valuable thing in the room. For members who want my personal feedback on their practice submissions, there is a paid tier that gives you that substantive written feedback from me within 48 hours on every submission you post. Start by joining free. The link is in the description. If the deeper work is something you want, you will find your way to it. I will see you inside. Thank you for watching. And whatever else you do this week, go home knowing that the work you do for the people you lead matters more than they will ever tell you it does. It always matters. You just need someone to say it out loud.